Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so really briefly, hi, I'm Andrea from the University of Southampton. Great to hear talks obviously from other Russell Group institutions. So the University of Southampton is also part of the Russell Group. When you're doing your research, have a look at different courses, and as said earlier on, look at modules, look at the extra opportunities as well, like study abroad, year in industry. Southampton can offer lots of those as well. I've brought lots of prospectuses at the back, so on your way out, obviously, if you're interested, help yourself. But you guys haven't necessarily been to a physical fair to get these yet, but all universities will have prospectuses. You can order them online, free of charge. They'll get delivered to you normally within 5 to 10 working days from our ones. But in here, it lists really nicely exactly what we're looking for. So although it's online, if you're like me and you like kind of occasionally the universities you definitely really are considering going to or applying to, it can also just be that extra bit of confidence to say, there, that sounds and looks really good. There's also lots of other useful information there about how and when to apply, extracurricular opportunities, scholarships and bursaries, talented athlete scholarship schemes, all of these things that you need to consider. So when you're considering where to go or if you want to go to university, do have your prospectuses, your online research. Obviously now more than ever, you've got a lot of this at your fingertips anyway because of the pandemic. So Unifrog is fantastic. There's also Uni Taster Days, there's Student Stream. These are all websites where you can go and test drive what options are out there and available to you. So I'd say university obviously is a big commitment, whether you do it as a degree or degree apprenticeships, whatever you want to do. Financially and time-wise, you need to weigh up the different options and what's suitable for each and every one of you. But it's thinking about what you actually want to get out of your experience, whatever that might be. I would say even if you're not thinking of going to university, use all the resources and support that you've had so far about how to write personal statements and getting those creative juices flowing, because when it comes to applying for jobs in the world of work, it's a bit like a cover letter. So whatever you put in the personal statement, it's really reflecting on the transferable skills you've obtained through any experience, and you're applying that to the world of work afterwards. So whether that's now, what you've done obviously in year 12, then through to year 13, and then hopefully when you go onto university or your degree apprenticeship. So just really do your research, as I said. Different universities may have the same title. So for example, in Southampton, there are 2 universities. There's us, the University of Southampton, and there's Solent. We're 2 completely different universities in the same city. A bit like in London, there's multiple ones, obviously, Manchester, big cities, that happens. But we offer the same title of courses, so as we've spoken about earlier today, law, for example, but the actual, what we're looking for, so entry requirements and the actual course content differs massively. So just make sure you do know what you're signing up to. It's the right course for you. We're offering the right sort of modules, and yeah, just make an informed choice basically. But I'll be around at the end. If you have any questions about Southampton or Russell Group universities, then please do come and ask me. Thanks for listening. Good luck. Right, now we lay up the water paper.
Hi everyone, we're from Potter April. We're just going to give you an overview on surveying in the construction industry. So my name's Dan, I'm a senior quantity surveyor at Potter April. I'm going to talk to you about the company as a whole and the different roles and responsibilities we've got within the company.
Yeah, my name's Stuart and I'm a quantity surveyor as well at Potter April, and I'll talk more about the education and apprenticeship side of the industry.
So we'll start talking about Potter April. So we're a local firm, we're just based in Beckenham, and we're a multidisciplinary construction-based company based in South East London. We've also got 3 other offices in Brighton, Colchester and in central London, and we've been operating for 50 years. Within our company we've got different departments. We've got quantity surveyors, project managers, I'll talk about each discipline, building surveyors, clerk of works, architects and principal designers that look after the health and safety. So as it says there, the surveying side of it is the measurement, valuation, protection and enhancement of the world's physical assets. When we go to schools we always ask the question, does anyone know what a surveyor is? We also get And we always get the answer that one of the people on the streets that's stop and start and say, do you do this, do you do that, what, can I get your data? We often get that response a lot. There's different types of surveying in the construction industry that me and Stuart focus on. There's also land and property. I'll just give you an overview on land and property before I talk about construction. So, working in the land surveying side of it means there's mapping, development, and working with the land around us. There's also property surveyors that are responsible for advising owners and occupiers of a range of activities from purchase development and valuations to the management of letting. Moving on to mine and Stuart's side, which is the construction industry, there's quantity surveyors, which is what me and Stuart do. We're involved with the financial management of our clients' assets, so all the money from start to finish, the design, how much a client might say to us, we want to build 100 flats, how much is this going to cost, we'll work it out and give them a brief, and we'll see that on site, keep it on track and make sure everything's going to plan. We also have building surveyors that are involved with looking at existing buildings, making sure that everything's operating correctly, any repairs that might need to be updated. Yeah, as it says there, if you like the actual building knowledge side of it, then building surveying would be the one for you. We also offer project management apprenticeships at our company. Project management is when you have the complete control of the project. It's communication skills from start to finish. You liaise with quantity surveyors, contractors, clients, and you are the main focus for the whole job. You'll be speaking to the client every day and making sure that the client gets and the project's on time and within budget.
Yeah. So one of our most recent projects was for Sky Studios over in Elstree, and they essentially, Sky came to our company and basically said, we don't want to rent any studios around the country anymore, so we want one place just to film everything. So the likelihood is if any future TV series that come onto Sky, it's probably going to be filmed here. And that project, at the moment, it says there 12 film studios, production support, there's a multi-storey car park and a visitor centre as well, and that was approximately 300 million. And I think it was approximately 4 to 5 years. I think it was around about 4 to 5 years to build that as well. So before it even looked like that, it was just a field. And essentially they came along and said, we just want one place to film everything and we want everything to be central. So that's probably one of our sort of marquee projects. Next one. Yeah, Kidbrooke Village, probably maybe a bit more familiar to some people in the area. It's that was complete demolition of the existing building. And all the tower sort of blocks around it as well, and essentially it was a commission of like a regeneration of the whole area, so that involved probably around about 2 years of surveying the actual land to see if you could even build on it in the first place. So even before we came along, there was probably architects and surveyors and engineers involved saying, can we actually put a building on that site? And we ended up being assigned to the project as well, which was around about 990 million for that one, and I think it was, yeah, as it says there, 4,000 new homes, and I think that was approximately around about 9 to 10 year build time for that one as well. So if you were assigned to a project like that, you'd probably be working in a team of maybe 3 or 4 people, and you would essentially be overseeing things like value of the overall project. So you might be assigned to look at when the actual building's the frame of it, or just anything so from like the foundations or the initial inception of it. And as it moves along, you're basically on the project learning. As for me as well, if you're quite new to the industry a few years back, you'll basically work with a senior and then a director above that as well. So you'll always be able to learn from someone else. And this is one of your projects, Dan?
Yep, so Holloway Prison, we're just starting this one now. So Holloway Prison used to be a women's prison, and the prisoners got decanted about 6 years ago and moved to other prisons. And London Borough of Islington are going to knock down the whole prison, and they're going to construct 980 new flats for Islington Council, and that's going to take 8 years to build, and that'll be a project value of costing the client 300 million. So as we have a lot of small projects, we work with a lot of councils from Southwark, Barking and Dagenham, Bexley, And then we have big high-scale projects as well that take over a year. So really, if you're looking to start, you could get assigned to one of these and really be on it throughout your whole apprentice scheme for 5 years, really, which is quite a good learning curve.
Yeah, so the next part of it within the industry is obviously the studying, and there is sort of like multiple different routes. So the first one is a full-time study. So generally a full-time university is around about 3 to 4 years, and you're generally at university for around about 2 to 3 days a week, with the other 2 days made up of like personal study, so to do assignments or exam revision, anything like that. You can also do a 5-year course as well at university for this. It basically involves the first 3 years you'll do your study, so you have your modules as normal, things like, so if it's quantity surveying, you'll do stuff like contract management, procuring contracts, and you'll do like cost estimating, so you'll get given data to produce a cost estimate for a building. And sometimes what that involves is in the middle of like year 3 or 4, you can actually go off and do sort of like a year out with an employer, so you get 12 months experience in the industry, and then you come back to university for the final bit to do like a dissertation or a research paper to make up your final grade. And after this, the full-time route as well, you can also do a accreditation for professional competence. So that is your chartership to become a chartered surveyor. And it's the same for the next one as well, like part-time. So that's a 2-year, but you have to have your degree from university first. And then part-time study. So this is what I did, and I finished last year. So I started in 2015, and I did 5 years. But what that involved was finding a company like Potter Raper to sponsor me. And so that involved me taking on a bit of work experience first, get your foot in the door, and then they send me to university 1 day a week. I do exactly the same modules as a full-time course, and at the end of it, you get your degree qualification, and then you go straight into employment. So for the remaining 4 days, I essentially worked full-time, like alongside Dan, on like many projects as well. We would normally say this route is probably the best one to sort of explore more if you were looking at sort of like surveying or the construction industry, purely because you've got the 4 to 5 year experience first, whilst sort of attending university. You've got the workplace experience as well. So just for example, I was my final year, I was doing things like contract management and sort of like cost estimating and measurement, but I was actually already doing that at work 4 years before I even got to university to do it. So the actual workplace experience is quite beneficial when you come to do your studying as well. And again, like that one with the part-time, is you get the 2-year APC. So we've got a couple of people that are within our company who took different routes as well. So they both did a mix of part-time and full-time. So top up there, one of our directors, he did a 4-year degree, which involved full-time study, and he did a year out with Potter Raper, and then came back after he finished his degree. And he's now an associate director, so he's not doing too bad for himself after that. And then Dan as well, he did 5 years full-time and then came into the industry. So that would involve, what was it, university 1 day a week?
University 1 day a week, yeah. Just to recap on what Stuart just based on there, Stuart and myself, we've done the 5 years part-time. We would advise on that because, for one, your company would pay for your university fees throughout the whole 5 years, and obviously that can rack up, and also you get the help and the knowledge of everyone around you in the office. So when you're doing your exams and you're doing your assignments, we're all very helpful, and everyone's got the background knowledge to help you with your dissertation as well.
Yeah, you've always got multiple resources in the industry as well. So even when we speak to contractors, because we focus on like the client side as well, so you can even speak to multiple people within the industry or like on your project teams as well, and they'll always be able to help you with certain bits of work. Even if, for instance, you went to university, so like Peter, who is one of our project managers, he actually didn't do a construction-related degree, but afterwards he joined Potter Raper and decided that he'd do a master's degree in a construction-related subject, and he's now become chartered as well after finishing that. So all in all, so there's sort of 5 years worth of studying, and then the extra 2 years after that. And then Nicola at the bottom as well, another one of our project managers. This is actually the route I took. So it was a HNC, which is sort of like a foundation course, which gives you more of an overview of the industry instead of focusing in one area. So you do a little bit of architecture, you do a little bit of building surveying and quantity surveying as well, and then touch on project management. And then after that, for 3 years, is the degree. But obviously, up there, I know 5 years and 6 years and 7 years for some people does look like quite a long time, but for me personally, that was probably the quickest 5 years of studying, just purely because I was at work at the same time. And then, I mean, afterwards you can sort of go on to do a master's if you want as well, or you can just stick with the degree and go into full-time employment. But as Dan said, one of the biggest perks was essentially my employer sponsors me, and you know, sounds great. I actually didn't pay anything towards my university study, purely because they sort of do like an apprenticeship style course. So they will actually take you on as an apprentice, train you up within the industry, and train you sort of day to day. And then the study sort of comes secondary with it. So whatever you learn at work, you can always apply it to university, and whatever you learn at university, you can apply it to your day-to-day work as well.
Yes, just to recap, we've given you quite a quick overview on the surveying industry and what we do as a company. If you're a bit apprehensive of joining straight into an apprenticeship scheme, we also offer work experience where you're more than welcome to come into the office and one of the roles we spoke about and have 1 or 2 weeks with the likes of us and seeing if you like it before signing yourself up for a university or apprentice. But from my personal point of view, I do like it. It's different every day. It's sociable. You get to speak to colleagues, clients and contractors. And yeah, I mean, if anyone's got any questions, we're happy to stand at the front, or we'll wait at the back. And I've also left my business card at the back, and there's some pamphlets as well. So if anyone's got any questions, yeah, we're happy to ask. If not, thanks for your time.
Welcome our next guest, CIS Security.
I think I'm the last one, I know.
Before we've got Kent Uni, but you're the last employer.
Okay, and I know you must be getting a bit tired and a bit weary now. So I'm Tracy Plant, I'm the HR Director at CIS Security, and I've been working for CIS for 20 years and been in the industry for near enough 32 years now. And what I would like to do today is just give you a flavour about the security industry in general. Where's that first slide? All right. Security in general, because where do you mainly see security staff? You might see them in Tesco's, Sainsbury's, sporting events like Wembley, concerts. But security is a very wide industry, and there's a raft of careers, job roles for you, and I wanted to just show you a video to just open up that mindset to security and hopefully put some interest into you of what the security environment is about. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it should come.
So, it's time to choose a career path. Security. A big search will show a few wide-known security jobs. But did you know that there's only a tiny piece of security behind? And you're not limited to one part either. A whole bedroom full of security career jobs. Feeling like something new for you. So you're going to visit some architecture. How about designing smart buildings and defensive architecture that solve fully laden Orient tracks. Delve into and explore tech with Cyber First. Apply your analytical skills to define cyber of the future. Perhaps you're good at leading or managing these own projects, but have the strategic thinking and communication skills to run large operations. Not to mention those who study textile design, who could develop an expert on protective clothing that could save others' life. When you yourself are resourceful, like working outdoors and engaging with the public, which can take you far in the range of frontline security roles. Like an engineer in the making, you could invent and install responsive facial recognition to prevent a terror attack before it even happens. Look at secondary engineer. And it doesn't stop there. We need scientists, social scientists, surveyors, engineers, programmers, researchers, designers, psychologists, criminologists, linguists, technicians, administrators, educators, team players, problem solvers, leaders, protectors, investigators, analysts, managers, guardians, inventors, creative thinkers, critical thinkers, custodians, and good listeners. The world of security is expanding rapidly. The Home Office is committed to measure £11 million into supporting the growth of the security sector, whilst a whopping £1.9 billion has been earmarked for the National Cyber Security Strategy. That's £1,274 million. Take a slice. Good tech is drug security and security. The American Security Professionals Institute, they help you deploy experience, mentoring, apprenticeships, and internships. Security with complex range of opportunities, whatever your interests or abilities, there's a career in security, respected, recognized, professional, the Security Institute. My privilege.
Okay, I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into the world of security and how vast it is and how all of your qualifications that you're currently doing actually fits into the security world. So I'm going to talk about CIS and what we're about. So this is us, very busy environment, particularly during the COVID and the pandemic when we were classed as frontline staff, when we was dealing with all the security measures of a lot of the buildings that we secure in London. But us as a team, we're based in Catford, so we're very local to you, and that's where our office is, and we have a lot of fun. So we've got the office-based workers, there's about 60 of us in the office, and Darcy's one of us, and then we have a raft of 1,600 frontline security personnel securing the environments for everybody, that's whether they're in London, South East England, up to Midlands, Newcastle and around. So this slide's just a bit of flavour. We have a bit of fun with England, fantastic football this week, some of the buildings that we operate in. This was my first apprentice, Georgina. She heads up our recruitment, and that's me presenting a wall to her. So there's something for everyone at CIS. So what do we actually deliver in terms of security solution? We deliver the actual people, so that's security officers. We don't deal with retail in terms of the Sainsbury's and Tesco's. We deal with that corporate security and looking at all what measures we can to secure people when they're working in their environments or whatever buildings they're working in. We also do front of house reception, so the concierge, the meet and greet, reception, and also we do innovative solutions. That is about intelligence, and I'll talk about that shortly. That's about systems, so access control systems, the CCTV cameras. We also do consultancy work, so security risk and consultancy, and also HR services and training as well. So, would you like to work in one of the exciting buildings in London? Leadenhall Building, which we call the Cheese Grater. 110 Bishopsgate, which is Heron Tower, which is the tallest building in the City of London. We also do various universities, Regent's, University of Westminster, and London Bridge City, very exciting, along where the HMS Belfast is. And also, you all know Canary Wharf.
So these are just some of the locations you could be working at if you wish to join CIS as a frontline staff member. So, the sky is your limit. So you're in year 12 now, making those important decisions going into year 13 of what is your journey post year 13. And believe me, the sky is your limit, whether you choose the university or you go down the apprenticeship route. All of you are fantastic achievers. Now, I'd like to just talk about the apprenticeship route. It's very close to my heart, and I lead the apprenticeships and the succession planning at CIS. The benefits of the apprenticeship route is that you earn and learn at the same time. So while you're learning all those important skills, achieving those qualifications, you're actually getting a wage as well. And continuous learning, that's key now for your future. So when you go into your workplace, it's important that you continue learning, whether that's through professional qualifications or in your spare time as well. Reading, YouTube, it's all about learning. And what we will do is we will hook you up with events in the city. There's lots of events going on. We work very closely with the city security, city police, and it's joining them to networking events and enjoying being part of that city of security. Okay, I'd just like to touch base with you about our SET programme and what that means. Our SET programme is an apprenticeship programme for frontline staff. So it is developing those skills, it's enhancing enrichment, and it's training while you're on the job. Okay, so what do? We break down our SET programme into modules. And part of that will be achieving professional qualifications. It will also be part of coaching, mentoring, and we'll be doing rotational programmes every 6 months, so you get a good flavour about the life of security. So whether that will be working in one of our iconic buildings, in educational sites, in healthcare, there's a raft of experience for you to gain during those 2 years while gaining those qualifications. At the end of that 2 years, you may decide your specialist area, where you would like to go into, and we will support that move with you. You'll be mentored by some of our specialists, and also our MD will take you under his wing and allow you to join lots of networking events so you can get out and meet people and be part of that City of London, which is exciting. So this is a typical journey, so it's gaining experience. It's very much like building a house. You've got to build the foundations first before you can put those bricks on and finish off with that roof. But that journey can be a very quick journey for you. We love to fast track young talented people that's got the right attitude, that wants to get to that account manager and director level. Our MD, Neil Catton, he was a frontline security officer and he had the drive and ambition to get to directorship, and you can as well. So while you're going through your journey of assess, you're picking up those various qualifications, you're gaining those skills and experience, and you're directing yourself through that roadwork for the pathway that you want to be in. So with security officers, you're learning all the risks and all the buildings that you're working in. Quite quickly moving to supervisor level when you're managing and leading a team. When you get to manager, you are responsible for the security management of that building or location you're working for. When you come on to account management, you'll be responsible for various different contracts and various clients as well. So you can see where those responsibilities grow within your journey. And then of course, when you get to directorship, you enjoy a game of golf or going to the football and enjoy all that lovely events while also supporting your clients. And management level can be you within a short period of time of 2 years, 3 years, whatever your journey plan is. Okay, so how do we link that into qualifications? Because you'll think, security, I don't know if it's that if that's me. And I'd just like to link something with you. If you're into psychology, it's about behaviour recognition. It's so important in security, looking at people's behaviours. How are they behaving when they come into that building or they're going into that location? That's really, really important. If you're into technology, a lot of young talent are into technology now. So it's about cybercrime. We've got an intelligence unit at our head office where we've got a team and they're looking for apprentices as well, of looking at all that intelligence of how we can protect all the people that work on our assignments. Also physics, design in buildings, that's all security, looking at all the risks, looking at all the exit points, looking at how that building should look like, whether it's a new building or a building being refurbished. So all of the qualifications that you've been doing during your education, and particularly into sixth form, certainly links in to the security industry. So this is John. He can be one of your mentors. Highly experienced. He started off in the industry. He was the site manager for Chelsea Football Ground. He deals with all our risk management. He's very high up in the industry. He knows a lot of people in the industry, and he'll be there for you to guide you through the journey. He's got a raft of security qualifications, and that is something we can support you in achieving if you wish to join CIS. So that's frontline. We also have our support services, which is our head office. And this is just some of the qualifications that can be linked to the various departments and teams we have at head office. So I'd just like to pick out a couple. Payroll. Our payroll analysis, super individual Casey. She joined us as an apprentice from sixth form, done her business administration, got a flair for payroll, and she's now doing her payroll apprenticeship qualification. IT, we've got 2 IT guys, left school, didn't know what wanted to do, done their business administration, and they're now doing their cyber qualifications in IT as well. So again, it's about giving opportunities to people. Also, I'd just like to highlight HR, as you've heard from Darcy today. We've got our apprentices that's joined HR, and they've gone on to do their CIPD HR management qualifications as well. So there's lots of qualifications out there through the apprenticeship route, whether you go frontline into security or you want to be part of the support department at our head office. So I just want to show you a short couple of videos of our apprentices. Yep, so if we can get that out, it's only about 30 seconds because I think it's okay for me to talk to you, but you can hear from some of our wonderful people of their journeys. So I think you have to control. Should come on. Oh, no. I think it goes into something else. I don't think it's going to work, is it? Right. There's no link on there. No, it's not going to work. Don't worry. We'll show them another everybody, please. Working. Nearly there. So, success. What is success for you? It's like an iceberg. At the top, people see your promotions and that. But what's really important is what goes on under the iceberg. Daily goals. People don't see that, but that's what you need to do to achieve in the workplace. Strength, good habits. Be focused. As you can see, you've been doing this all at school, and that will be part of your journey into employment. Meeting targets, you've got your exams, you've got all your coursework you need to do. Staying healthy, that's mentally and physically as well. That's really important for your next journey into the workplace. So Hayley asked me a question of, what do employers look for when they're recruiting for apprentices? And you might think, I haven't got those skills. I don't know much about security, but it's those lifelong skills, and I know your teachers would have been talking to you about them over your journeys at school. So it's about having energy, having the right attitude, being approachable, doing extra, going that extra mile, having good work ethic, punctual, timekeeping, good positive body language. I know your teachers must have said to you, can you sit up straight? Can you see how all what you've been learning in those lifelong skills at school puts you in good stead for when you join the workplace? And this is what we look for when we're interviewing people to join CIS. You'll be trained on whatever profession you go into, but these lifelong skills are embedded, so it's really important that you start thinking about them, because that's what your future employer will be looking, and if you've got them right, you will make success. Okay, so I hope we all watched the football this week, but sport is very much like being in the workplace. If you've got passion, if you've got determination and leadership, you could easily reach your goal. Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Oh, just one thing. We love people to come in and do work experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer work experience for you. If you would like to show your interest to Hayley, okay, and we'll do it as a raffle. So if you would like to do some work experience with CIS next year, when you're in year 13, express your interest through to Hayley. Hayley will pass them on to me, and then hopefully we look forward to seeing you at our offices doing some work experience. When you express your interest, can you please say what your interest is, whether it's finance, HR, intelligence, IT, and we'll try and slot you in for some wonderful work experience with us. Okay, thank you very much.
So now we welcome the final part of our human interaction this morning before we go virtual this afternoon. This is Jonathan from the University of Kent.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Jonathan, and as mentioned, I come from the University of Kent down in Canterbury. I am a recruitment officer, so it's my job to just help tell people about university in general, about Kent specifically. And let me just start by saying what a great pleasure it is to be here with you all. I started this job in March 2020, so not a great time to start a new job, obviously. So this is actually the first time I've ever been in person doing this kind of thing. So yeah, what a great novelty. Okay, so today in the next kind of 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be giving you a general overview of a university, including things like how to choose a university, student finance, accommodation, what you can actually expect about kind of university learning, that sort of thing. Obviously, to cover everything in that amount of time, it's a slightly tall order, but we'll do our best. I'll kind of whiz through this and then hopefully give you guys some good ideas. So what we're going to be covering today, as I say, so talking about how to choose a course and a university, how to apply to university, so a bit about the UCAS process, some tips on writing a personal statement, a bit about student finance, and then about student accommodation and student life. Let me also just say at the top that, I work for a university, obviously, but, I'm not coming here to try and say everybody absolutely should go to university. There's many great options, as we've already heard. So hopefully I'm just here to give you the information for you to make the right decision for you. But, I'm not here just to say you all have to go to university or you all have to go to the University of Kent. But hopefully, this helps you work out what your options are and work out get to where you want to be. Okay, so first off, how to choose. Obviously, there's massive amounts of choice when it comes to university. So how do you kind of find the needle in the haystack when it comes to your course and your university? Right off the bat, we think there's some important questions that you need to ask yourself. If you're somebody that maybe you've already decided that you do want to go to university, so think about some of these things. What is most important to you about your university and about the course that you're going to do? Is it the course content? So maybe you're really invested in studying a specific topic. You would really, love doing a certain subjects at school, for example, and you want to carry that on. Or maybe there's, a particular career that you want to go into. You really, want to go into, economics, let's say, so you're going to study that at university. Or maybe there's a particular part of the country you want to go to, or somewhere that your friends or your family members are already at university, and you want to be close to them. There's no right answer to this. It is going to be different for every single individual. But it's important to, right at the beginning, think about what are your priorities when it comes to going to university, and identify, what your key touchstones are going to be when you're making these decisions. Fortunately, choice isn't really limited by subject. If you can think of a subject that you want to study at university, there's probably going to be somewhere that offers it. There's around 37,000 different courses available at universities here in the UK across 300 different institutions. So, no matter how obscure it is, the subject that you want to do, you can probably do it somewhere. For example, I went to the University of Kent myself. I graduated in 2017, and I studied military history. So a pretty obscure course that you can only do in 3 different places around the country, but fortunately, there was somewhere for me. Obviously, this makes it a little bit tricky because there's just so much choice. How do you actually narrow that down? As I said, it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack in some ways to find the right place for you. So we've got these 4 kind of key categories that we think it's worth considering when you choose your university. So that is course, what is the course, the content, what is the content of that course, and then whether you're thinking about going to a campus or a city university. So I'm going to unpack these now. So course content is just, what is that course made up of? What are you actually going to be studying while you're doing that degree? And it's important to know that course content will vary broadly across different courses at different universities, even if they have the same name. So, for example, I've got 2 examples here, which is BA History, so just kind of a history degree, at the University of Birmingham and then the University of Kent. This is the list of modules you can do. Modules are just topics, essentially, that you cover during the course of a year or course of a degree. And you can see here that at the University of Birmingham, you've got 5 compulsory modules, and then you only have 2 optional modules for the first year. That means that most of the choices of what you're studying in that year are made for you, and you're all going to be doing these same topics. At the University of Kent, we only have 1 compulsory module in the first year, and then all the other options are up to you. You can see you've got everything from medieval history to British history, things about the United States, all that kind of stuff. So, if you're thinking about a course that's got a wide variety of topics that it can cover, then do some research and drill down just beyond the course title. Because if you're just applying for, history at all different universities and expecting it to be the same every single one, it's probably not going to be. So do think about the course content and make sure that the course you're applying to tailors itself to your specific interest. Entry requirements is another big variation that you will have between different courses at different universities. So again, even if courses have the same name or kind of cover the same content, the entry requirements will likely be different across different universities. This can be for a variety of reasons. It might be that one university is very well regarded, it has a very high reputation, for example, Oxford and Cambridge. Or it might be just to do with the course content again, or it could be to do with the facilities to have that kind of thing. So for a variety of reasons, entry requirements will vary. But just make sure that you're kind of then drilling down into them and seeing that it's something that's appropriate for you. Obviously, people have different levels of academic attainment. Some universities might be at the standard that you're applying to, but there's not much point in applying to all universities if you know what grades you're roughly going to get and the offers that you're being made are way above that. So do apply for something that is going to be kind of at your level, you're not going to be disappointed. Also, just have a check to make sure that there's any extra caveats to the entry requirements. So, for example, I've got these work examples again for this is BA History at Birmingham and at Kent. So if you were to apply to history at Kent, then you would need 3 Bs at A-level, and one of those would need to be a humanities-based essay subject, so something like history or philosophy or English, but you wouldn't necessarily have to have taken history at university, at A-level or wherever it is you're doing. And then if you were to apply to Birmingham, you would need AAB, so a slightly higher entry requirement. and one of those would have to be A-level history, medieval history, or ancient history grade A. So you have to have studied history and got an A in that subject. So again, make sure that you're really looking in detail at these different entry requirements to make sure that you're applying to courses that are appropriate for you. And then campus versus city university. So this is moving away from the academic side of things and more to the kind of lifestyle side of things when it comes to university. In the UK, university is generally based around two different formats, and that is a campus university or a city university. We've got two pictures here. The top one is our Canterbury campus at the University of Kent. And the bottom image here, this is a picture of the University of Sheffield, also incidentally my hometown. But you can see that whereas a campus university basically works by all the facilities for the university are in one place. So the campus is almost like a small town in its own right. You've got all your accommodation, your lecture theatres, your library. You're going to have cafes, bars, restaurants, sports facilities, all that kind of thing, all in one place. So it's a very kind of enclosed student bubble. Whereas in a city university, all the facilities are going to be spread out across an entire urban area. So here in the bottom picture, you've got parts of the university here, and you've got the bottom part of the image, but then the other kind of accommodation, teaching facilities, all that kind of thing are spread out across the city. So they might be, a 10-minute bus journey apart. Just going to drill down into a bit more detail about these two different formats. Obviously, both have advantages and disadvantages. There's no right answer again for this. I'm going to keep saying that because this is highly subjective. It's all about your choice. I'm just trying to give you the information to make the right one. But here's just some of the advantages and disadvantages of a campus university. So as I said, the University of Kent is a campus university, and it's that's what I went for. I decided I wanted to go to a campus, and for some of these reasons. So as I said, everything is in one place. It's all one centralised location, which is very convenient. It means that you're probably going to be living in student accommodation, which is 2 minutes away from your lecture theatre, where you need to get to 9 AM. Definitely makes your life a lot easier in that regard. You've got exclusive campus facilities, so things like sport facilities might be limited to just students, or for example, on our Canterbury campus, we have a students-only nightclub. And then also you've got a very tangible sense of a sort of self-contained student community. So as you're walking around the campus, you're going to be seeing pretty much all just other students or other staff members at that university. You're not going to be mixing with members of the public as much, which means that it's kind of a student, it's hard to describe, but it's kind of a student bubble feeling. It feels very much like you're at university and everything you're doing is about that university life. Also, it's just easy to get around, obviously, in a practical sense. But there are some drawbacks to some of these models. So you can be a bit further away from public facilities. Some campuses are a bit kind of out in the sticks. So if you want to get to a big shopping centre, let's say, or a train station, something like that, you might have a bit of a harder time getting around. And also, you're going to be less integrated with the local area. So if you're kind of really thinking about moving to a certain city, let's say, and you really want to get stuck in with the culture of that place and kind of mix in with the people, then a campus university might be a bit more of a limiting factor when it comes to something like that. And then a city university. So here we've got a picture of this is the University of Portsmouth, and the purple highlighted buildings that you can sort of make out are the university buildings. As you can see, they're spread out all throughout the city of Portsmouth. So some of the advantages of this model are that you've got a greater range of locations. So you might be down by the docks in the morning for a seminar, and then later on that afternoon you're on the other side of the city in a completely different building. So it's just a nicer way to kind of see a bit more of the place that you're living in and get around a bit more. You're going to have easier access to those public facilities and attractions that I mentioned, so big shopping centres. It's going to be easier access to public transport hubs as well, so if you are thinking about maybe going home a lot or something, or travelling around the country a bit, then that can be a bit easier, because obviously in a city generally where there's a university, there's going to be a train station, there's going to be all that kind of stuff. You're going to be more integrated into the city community as well, so it's probably going to feel a bit more like you're actually living in that city. So if you really, you really like the look of, Newcastle, let's say, and you want to move up there and kind of really get stuck into what it's like to live there and meet the people, then that could be a really good option for you to go to a city university. It can be a bit harder to get around because the facilities are all going to be a lot more spread out. As I say, it might be a 20-minute bus journey to get from one lecture to the next. And also you're going to have that less tangible sense of student community. It's worth noting that city universities will often have some kind of student hub, like a student union building or a bar or something. But you're going to be spread out all over the place. It's not like everybody's living in close proximity. So there's just a bit less of a kind of university, studenty feel to a city university. I will point out there are kind of variations on this as well. So you will sometimes get campus universities that are like in the middle of a city. So Birmingham, for example, their campus is surrounded by the city of Birmingham. And also you can get campus universities that are kind of quite close to a city as well. So you get kind of the best of both worlds, which is what we have in Canterbury. Okay, so just some final key questions to consider when you're thinking about choosing a university. So, first off, are the courses offered suitable for you? Is it tailored to your interest, or is it going to get you into the career that you want to go into later in life? Do you want to go to a campus or a city? As I just mentioned, is there something that particularly appeals to you? Do the social facilities suit your needs? What's the nightlife like? Are there bars? Are there kind of the things that you're interested in around? What student support services like? What is the accommodation like as well? Some universities will have very different accommodation to others. I'll talk about this in a bit more depth later on. And what's the overall location like? And ultimately, you just need to ask yourself the question, can you see yourself living there for 3 or 4 years? Because it's all well and good to focus on, the course or the societies, but ultimately, you have to do the mundane day-to-day of living in that place, making your dinner there, going out to the shops, that kind of thing. Can you see yourself living there for 3 or 4 years, being comfortable and being happy in that place? Okay, so how to apply, coming down to some more of the kind of practical side of things when it comes to university. So applications for undergraduate studies, that just means, bachelor's study essentially, are made through UCAS, and you can apply for up to 5 UCAS codes in 1 year. So that can be all at the same institution. You can apply for 5 different courses at the same university, or you can apply for different courses at 5 different places. It's entirely up to you. Also, there's no obligation to use all 5 choices if you don't want to. And if you do want to apply for medicine, dentistry, or veterinary medicine, you are limited, so you have 4 choices for those subjects, and then your 5th choice would have to be something else. It can be something else related, so you could do biomedical science, for example, but you only have 4 options when it comes to those specific subjects. If you're applying to conservatoires, for things like the performing arts, and then you have 6 choices, and they are able to see where else you've applied. With normal universities, they can't tell where else you've applied, so you don't need to worry about that. If you're thinking about applying to Oxford or Cambridge, then you can only apply to one or the other. I've never really fully understood why. I guess it's because they're probably competitive with each other. But you would have to choose one or the other. You can't do both, unfortunately. Okay, so here's a quick look at the timeline, so how we would start out. So applications, you can't really see that date, but I will. So 1st of September is when applications open on UCAS, and you can start applying, right from then. If you're thinking about Oxford or Cambridge, or veterinary science, dentistry, or medicine, those kind of specific subjects I mentioned, you do have an earlier deadline. So that's the 15th of October. So you really need to be, on your bike and making sure that you're getting those in good time if you're thinking about those. For most people, the deadline will be the 26th of January for this coming year. So that's 26th of January 2022, if you're thinking about September 2022 entry. So you've got a good amount of time. And it's also worth noting, people often ask me, is there an advantage to doing it earlier? Your application isn't any more favourably considered if you submit it early as opposed to submitting it on the day of the deadline. That's not an invitation to just kind of leave it as late as you can, because obviously if you need to do extra things for the application or revisit things, it's good to have a bit of extra time. But if you maybe decide late on that you want to go to university and you end up submitting, just a couple of days before the deadline, that's absolutely fine. You won't be any worse off compared to somebody that was submitted on the 1st of September. So at that point, applications are received and sent to the universities, and that's when we do our thing and we start looking at them and deciding whether we want to make offers on those. Around that time, accommodation applications will also open, and finance applications will also open just after that. I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about finance and accommodation shortly. But after the UCAS deadline, that's when you can start applying for accommodation and finance as well. So, you might be invited to an interview, depending on what course and what university you're applying to. These days, it's more the exception than the rule. In my experience, it's quite rare to be invited for an interview. Universities like Oxford and Cambridge will interview, obviously, and as well for things like medicine, dentistry, veterinary science. But most universities, for most degrees, won't interview, and if they are, then that will be stipulated in the kind of course description when you come to apply as well. If you were to interview, then that would be kind of just after the deadline. So if you applied at the earlier deadline in mid-October, you'd probably be interviewed in kind of late October or November. And if you were going with the main deadline in January, you might be interviewed in sort of March kind of time. And then after those interviews are made, or if you haven't had an interview just a few weeks later, that's when decisions are made from the university. So what is actually on the UCAS form? What do you need to send in, and how do you get yourself across? So you've got personal details and choices. That's obviously just things like your name, your date of birth, where you're from, and the universities that you want to apply to, and the courses that you want to apply to. Your qualifications, so things like your GCSEs, A-levels, BTECs, whatever qualifications it is that you've taken. Your references, so that typically be supplied by somebody from your school. And that's also where things like predicted grades come in as well, and any mitigating circumstances that you might have. So for example, you've had health issues that have affected your education, then that's where this kind of stuff would come in. And then the personal statement, which I will talk about in a lot more depth in just a moment. So back to the timeline. So you've submitted your application, it's gone off to the university, they've looked at it, they've started making decisions. So let's say you get your offers back, you've received offers on at least some of your choices. that's when you start making decisions about your firm and insurance choices and where you actually want to go, what you want to do with those offers. After that, we roll around to August. That's when results day, so 10th of August this year is when results day is, so it'll be around the same time next year. That's when you can either accept your offers if you've got your grades, or things like clearing open. So if you want to apply to a different university, let's say, or you need to apply to a different course, maybe you didn't get the grades that you were expecting. And then after that's all happened, whether you've just met your offer and got your place at university, or you've applied to do clearing, whatever it is, by the end of August, that is when registration and enrolment and all that kind of information about how to actually start your course starts getting sent to you from your university. And then we roll back around to September, October, the following year, or that a few months later, the timelines come a full year round circle basically, and that's when you would actually start university. So your offers, what kind of offers can you get, and how do you kind of work out what's what? So for most students, they will get a conditional offer from a university, and that means that the university looks at your predicted grades and your previous qualifications, and they say that yes, we will offer you a place at university, but you haven't yet finished your qualifications. You probably haven't finished your A-levels or whatever it is that you're doing. So we will give you a place on the condition that you get these grades. So it might be BBB or AAA, whatever it is. You then need to go off, finish your A-levels or BTEC or whatever, and meet the conditions of that offer. You might receive an unconditional offer. This is for people who have already finished their qualifications, so you've already got your final grades and your A-levels, let's say, and they just say you've already met the conditions to join the course, so we're just going to give you an unconditional offer straight away, and that is essentially just a place at university. You can be made unsuccessful in some cases, so this is where the university just isn't confident that you have the academic ability to really succeed on that course, so they don't make you an offer. But if that is the case, it would be very rare for you to be unsuccessful in all 5 of your choices. But there are still options after that. So as I mentioned, you've got clearing if you wanted to apply at a later date in August, or you've also got UCAS Extra. So if you are unsuccessful in all 5 of your choices, which as I say would be quite unusual, you can then add additional choices one at a time, so you can basically make additional applications after the deadline. I also should point out that the 26th of January deadline is a soft deadline, so it means that you can still submit your UCAS application after that point. It's just that universities aren't obliged to respond, but for the most part they actually will. But still, I would strongly say do your application before the 26th of January. Okay, so this is how you can then respond to your offers. You've got technically you've got 3 options, but there's 2 that are really relevant for you. So you've got your firm choice. This is basically you just saying, yes, this is where I want to go, this is my first choice. And then you've got your insurance choice, which is kind of your backup. So it's a good idea generally to, if you're thinking about maybe having an insurance choice, to apply for multiple universities and have one that's maybe got slightly lower grade entry requirements. That way, if you don't meet the grades for your first choice, you've still got your insurance choice where if you've missed your kind of top level grades that you need for the first choice, you've probably met the grades for your insurance choice and you can still get a place at university. There is no obligation to have an insurance choice if you don't want to. I personally didn't have an insurance choice because it was kind of, for me, it was just it was my first choice or bust. But you've got both options if you would like. And then once you've made these choices, all 3 of your other options are automatically declined and you effectively lose those offers if you had them. Okay, so moving over to the personal statement then, probably the most kind of high profile part of the application and the most daunting for most people, I would say. And this is really where you get your opportunity to get yourself across, beyond just the nuts and bolts of your grades and then your personal information. This is where you describe yourself and talk about why it is that you want to do that course and what's going to make you a good student. So you have 4,000 characters of text, or 47 lines. That's a limit placed by the UCAS website. And this is a hard word limit. I often get asked, how much can I go over that? Not at all. If you get to 4,000 characters, you literally just can't type anything more in, unfortunately. So it's going to take a few drafts, and you're probably going to, be working on this for a while to try and get it down to that limit. It sounds like a lot, but actually you fill that quite rapidly, I find, when it comes to actually writing this. So really what you want to be talking about in your statement is why you're applying, what are your ambitions and your interests, what is it you want to do with that course, where do you want it to take you in life, and what is it that's going to make you suitable for that course, beyond just your grades, what relevant skills do you have, what experiences you've been through, what achievements do you have that's prepared you well for that course. So here's just a rough guide of how we recommend people structure their personal statement. Obviously this isn't this isn't gospel. This is going to vary a lot between different people based on the activities they've done and the experiences they've had. But generally, you want to split it, I would say, 70-30 between an academic focus and then extracurricular focus. So, obviously start with some kind of introduction. This can just be very brief, maybe a couple of sentences, just to say, you know, what kind of courses it is that you're applying for, and then talk in depth about your academic interest. So this is really where you start unpacking why it is that you enjoy the particular subject that you're applying for. Maybe you talk about what it is that you've already studied at school and how you think that's going to fit in with what you're applying to do. Or also just obviously talk about why you enjoy that, and then maybe what you want to do to take it further as well. So thinking about career and that kind of thing. And then you've got supercurricular activities. So these are other activities that are related to your course that aren't your specific studies. So something, say you're studying religious studies, a supercurricular activity would be something related to religious studies. So it might be visiting certain museums or that kind of thing, but it's not your actual kind of in the classroom studies. Then we move on to extracurricular activities. So these are, again, activities that you've done outside the classroom, but these are the ones that aren't specifically related to your course, but they kind of give a good flavour of what kind of character you are and how you might then be a good student at that university. So things like, being part of a sports team, assuming you're not applying for something like sports science, being part of a sports team or playing a musical instrument, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously finish up with some kind of conclusion, just to sum up your points, and again, try and just get across very briefly why it is that you want to do that subject. So when it comes to making your points, there's quite a helpful structure that it's good to remember. And this is whether you're making points about academic interest or extracurriculars or that kind of thing. So that is ABC, very easy to remember. And that stands for action, benefit, course. So action, what is it that you've actually done? Benefit, how has it benefited you? What kind of skills has it helped you develop? And then course, you need to tie it back to the course that you're applying for and see how it relates to your future studies. So thinking a bit more specifically about the academic interest side of things, this is where you're talking about which course you want to study and why it is that you want to take it on to the university level. And also, what is it that you've already done that's equipped you to do that. So maybe it's the courses that you've studied at school, they have a particular focus on medieval history, let's say, and the course you're applying for has loads of modules on that. You can say, I've already studied medieval history in a lot of depth, and that's going to serve me really well in this course going forward. Have you done any other projects that you can talk about? Maybe if you've done an extended project, let's say. And also, what personal qualities do you have that's going to make you suited to studying in this area? Also, again, as I mentioned, if you've got a particular career in mind, it can be really helpful to mention that at this point, because then people can see that you're already forward-thinking, you're driven towards a certain goal, and then obviously it makes it very obvious if you want to then go into a career that's closely tied to the course you're applying to. Then supercurricular activities, as I mentioned, so these are the things that are related to the course that aren't necessarily in the classroom, so some things maybe that you've done in your own time. This could be anything like work experience or relevant volunteering, your extended projects, even if you've just been on holiday to a certain place and you've maybe learned something about your subject area through that, and any of your own kind of private work that you've done, maybe any private reading in your own time or projects that you've done, that kind of thing. So again, make the most of these activities. This is really your opportunity to big yourself up, as it were. So make sure that you're making the most out of these. I appreciate the instinct can sometimes be to be kind of humble or be a bit shy about the stuff that you've done, but universities really want to hear from you. They want to see that you're confident about your own abilities. So really do try and make the most of everything that you've done, as as low key or as small as you think it might be. And then extracurricular activities. So as I mentioned, this is the other activity you've done, outside of school maybe or alongside school, which isn't directly related to your course, but it still shows that you've got skills and you've got aptitude for doing a university degree. Again, it doesn't have to be like super official or organised. I think people often worry. They talk to me about, I don't have that many kind of hobbies that I do. I'm not part of a sports team or I'm not part of a band or anything like that. That's absolutely fine. It can be something quite casual, even if it's just your own personal hobbies or your own personal interests. If you can show that you're invested in the subject that you're applying to through, what you do in your own personal time, that's absolutely great. Do try and talk about, while, it's basically try and keep the focus on the skills that these activities have actually equipped you with. Because, if you talk about how you've won all these sports trophies, for example, but you never then tie it back to how that's actually going to help you at university, then it's kind of wasted paper, as it were. If you are struggling for ideas, even if at this point you're thinking, I don't have that much stuff that I do in my own time, I don't have that many hobbies or interests, it's never too late to actually start. You can take something up now, even if it's just, reading about the subject that you're going to be applying to. You can just list in your personal statement, here are some of the books that I've read. Even if you've only read them in the last few months, that's absolutely fine. Universities aren't going to be, chasing you down and asking you for your bronze swimming certificate, for example, if you talk about, you do swimming. They're not going to chase you up about the things that are in your personal statement. So don't worry too much, even if it's something that you've only done quite casually. Okay, so here's just a worked example of that ABC format that I talked about earlier. So remember, it's action benefit course. So in this example, the action is you're a member of a sports team. Something that not everybody would do, but you can substitute that for playing a musical instrument, being in a good drama group, whatever else it might be. How has that benefited you? Well, it's helped you develop discipline when you've been going to training and attending games. And then how does that relate to the course? Well, it means that you've developed the self-motivation and the discipline to do independent study. That you're going to actually be driven, and you're going to be the one pushing yourself while you're at university to study, to get your work in, and all that kind of thing. So again, something that's maybe not necessarily directly relevant to the degree that you're studying. Maybe if you're applying to medicine, also being on a sports team is maybe not that relevant, but you can see how you can tie that back into the course, even so. And again, just to finish, some more kind of top tips. So when you're writing, try and get across some enthusiasm for the subject and a wider experience of that subject, whether it be talking about museum visits you've done, let's say, or reading you've done. Obviously, check things like grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and we would strongly recommend that you have other people check it over as well. So give it to a parent or a guardian or a friend, and try not to start all your sentences with I, just because it can get a little bit repetitive. Be specific and structured, so it's very helpful to use that kind of 3-point structure, that ABC structure, as I said, and make sure that you're backing up your points with relevant examples. So if you're going to make a claim about these are the skills I have, you need to say where it is that you've actually gained those in real life. And then print it out as well. It can be quite helpful just to kind of have it written out on the page, and you can pick things up that you haven't necessarily seen on the monitor. Obviously check it over, as I said, and show it to other people around you. And then some of the things that we would recommend not to do. Obviously, I actually used to work in admissions, so I was the one that read personal statements and applications, and you do see some slightly amusing ones, and there are some things that we would recommend you not, things that we would recommend you avoid. So don't mention a specific university. It's important to note that you're writing the same personal statement for all 5 of your applications, or however many applications you've done. So if you specifically mention the University of Portsmouth in your personal statement, but you've also applied to the University of Kent, then we're going to read that and think that's, obviously it looks a bit odd, and I've seen that myself. Don't use negative comments. Again, as I say, it can be easy to, do yourself down, to try and be a bit too shy or a bit too humble about the things that you've done. I'd say only refer to yourself in the negative. Sorry, not in the negative, in the positive. Only refer to yourself in the positive. So, don't say things like, oh, even though I'm not very good at maths, blah, blah, blah. So you just leave that kind of thing out and just stick to the positive side of your character. Don't use things like cliches or quotes or just list things in your personal statement. It is meant to be, kind of a fully written body of text, almost like a short essay. So lists don't really fit in. And yeah, starting out with a quote is kind of tempting because it takes the pressure off you trying to think of your first line. But ultimately we want to hear from you. We want to hear your voice, not the words of somebody else. Don't try to be funny because it is a serious document, obviously. And also, admissions officers are, reading lots and lots of these. So, they're probably not really in the mood to be somebody writing their script for a Live at the Apollo. And also, don't use just irrelevant facts and comments as well. Make sure that you're tying everything back to the course, as I said. And make sure that everything you're saying is true. It goes without saying. Don't plagiarize. Don't download statements from online. You can use, other people's statements as inspiration, obviously. It can be a good starting point to, get yourself moving. But don't just copy and paste things into your own statement. All the personal statements are actually checked against each other. So there's a plagiarism checker. So we can see if you've used a pre-written personal statement that somebody's already used, then that will get flagged up. And also try not to exaggerate in your statement and really kind of oversell yourself as well. So just to finish up, some final top tips then about the personal statement. So you've got one personal statement, as I said, it goes to all the different universities, regardless of if you're applying for different courses or different universities. Get started as soon as you can because it will take you a little bit of time. And start with a plan. Don't just try and sit down and write it all in full immediately. So kind of list all the points that you want to make, and then maybe you can start narrowing those down and think about what are the main priority points that you want to make. It is going to take a few drafts to do. Don't expect yourself to be able to just do it in one sitting. And also don't worry too much about the opening sentence, as I say. It doesn't need to be anything groundbreaking. And also then think about how you work best. So whether it's writing out on paper first and then typing up, or just working in a word processor. And it's okay to save multiple different versions as well. It can be helpful to maybe write a paragraph one day, or write kind of multiple paragraphs, and then drop them around, put them in different places, that kind of thing. Okay, so moving on to the side of student finance. I realise we're a bit pressed for time, and I don't want to keep you guys from your lunch, so I will whiz through some of this. So student finance, in my opinion, is probably one of the most widely misunderstood aspects of higher education, and it's probably the most politicised as well. But hopefully I can help cut through some of the misinformation that often surrounds student finance. So what makes up student finance? The main parts are governmental support, so that's your tuition fee loan and the living cost loan. You can also get other funding through things like the Disabled Students Allowance and scholarships and bursaries, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to be focusing primarily on the loans that you can get from the government. So the tuition fee loan, this is the thing that actually pays for your course, and this is probably the highest profile aspect of student finance. This is the £9,000 a year that you'll often hear talked about, or £27,000 for a degree, and that's because a year of university in the UK, the maximum tuition fee is currently £9,250, and generally speaking, all universities in the UK will charge that maximum. So that's what you're going to be paying. So to cover this cost, there's a loan available from the UK government, and this is for all UK home students who are eligible to apply for the loan, and I will talk about eligibility a bit more in just a second. Important to note that the loan is paid directly to the university. You never see this money, it doesn't come into your account. You don't make tuition payments directly to the university. It just goes straight from the student loan company at the point that you register, and it goes into the university's account from there. So you never see this money at any point. And then the living cost loan is the other part of student finance. So this is obviously to pay for your cost of living, and again, it's a loan available from the UK government. So all eligible students are entitled to some of the loan, but the total amount that you can get is based on a couple of criteria. So it's your household income and where in the country you are going to go to university. Again, this loan is paid, differently. This loan is paid to you directly, unlike the tuition fee loan. So this money actually does come into your account, and then it's up to you to manage that money yourself. So you get an instalment at the start of each term, it might be a few £1,000s, and then it's up to you to use that to pay for your accommodation, your clothing, your food, all the other kind of stuff. But having had that at the start of the term, you need to make sure that lasts however many weeks it is to the end of that term, typically going to be about 12 weeks. So make sure you don't blow it all on a hi-fi system in September, because then you're going to be eating 25p noodles for the rest of the term. Okay, so one of the two criteria I mentioned about what your kind of total amount of living cost loan that you're entitled to is where you are kind of living when you're at university. So if you are living in your parental home, you are entitled to up to £7,987. That's to reflect the fact that your cost of living will probably be a little bit lower if you're living with family members, let's say. If you're living away from home and studying outside of London, that's anywhere outside the M25, then you're entitled to up to £9,488 to reflect the fact that you're going to be paying more in rent probably, and that's what most students will fall into that category. And if you're living in London, so anywhere inside the M25, away from home, again, then you're entitled to up to £12,382 to reflect the fact that the cost of living in London is a lot higher than many other parts of the country. So the other kind of criteria for determining how much loan you can get is your household income. And the idea is that the higher your household income, the lower the amount of living cost loan you will receive. And this is because the assumption is, and it's often not actually stated, but the assumption is if you come from a higher income family, your family are expected to support you while at university, and the government support you less, consequently. So here you can see the different brackets and the three different categories that I just mentioned in terms of the location. So if you're in the lower bracket, so from £0 to £25,000 a year of household income, then you're entitled to the maximum. So that would be that £9,400, £7,900 and £12,300 that I just mentioned. And then if we go all the way down, if you're right at the maximum amount of household income, £70,000 or more, then you're getting the lowest possible amount of living cost loan. So you can see how it most people would fall somewhere in the middle of this, obviously, but it's worth having a conversation with those in your household just to determine what kind of household income they might have, because it's obviously something that people might not necessarily be familiar with, so you can roughly work out how much loan you might be getting. And then just to give you a rough estimate of what you might actually be expecting to spend in terms of cost of living at university, we've just got this chart here. So this is based on some of the cost of living in Canterbury at the University of Kent. Obviously, again, this isn't hard and fast. This is going to vary a lot from person to person and from place to place. But some people might want to spend more on accommodation, let's say, whereas some people might go out less, they're going to spend less on socialising, or some people might have a more expensive phone contract, for example. But here you can see just on a week-on-week basis and then a year-on-year basis, how much you might roughly be expecting to spend. And so you can hopefully then work out what kind of shortfall you might need to make up from your student living cost loan, whether it be through part-time work or through family support, that kind of thing. Okay, so how do you actually apply? What's the practicality behind student finance? It's very straightforward. It's just an online application. You provide things like your passport, your national insurance number and bank details if you're going to be receiving payments for a living cost loan. You don't need a confirmed place at university to do your application. I mean, you just need to have made an application full stop. It can take up to 6 weeks to process, so make sure that you're applying as early as you can. And then also you might be required to send in additional evidence, or your kind of family members or those that you live with might be required to send in evidence just regarding a household income, so they can determine how much living cost loan you're going to need to get. I should have also mentioned, sorry, that application's open just after the UCAS deadline, so mid-January sort of time is when you can start applying for student finance. Okay, and the other two things, I'll touch on these very briefly, but scholarships and bursaries are two other forms of financial support that students can get while at university. So scholarships are free awards that you can get in recognition of outstanding academic achievement or sporting or musical achievement, for example. If you play sport at quite a high level and you're going to carry that on at university, sometimes the university will pay for you or give you financial support in order for you to keep playing that sport. Bursaries, alternatively, again, are free monetary rewards, often from external organisations, depending on your background, for example. So maybe charitable organisations might give bursaries to students from certain economic backgrounds, or certain organisations, for example, the NHS or the Armed Forces, will sometimes pay bursaries to pay for their future employees to go to university. So you get their bursary, get your degree, and then you go and work for them for a certain amount of years to essentially kind of earn your bursary. Okay, and then repaying the loan. So this is obviously kind of the bad side of student finance. It's great to have all this money coming in, but you do need to end up paying it back because it is a loan. I say you need to pay it back. The question is, do you actually do that? So it's really important to understand that student loans are nothing like any other loan you will ever get. It's nothing like a mortgage. It's nothing like a bank loan. It's not, the amounts that you pay back is not based on the amount that you have borrowed. It's based on the amount that you are currently earning. So you pay back 9% of everything you earn after £27,295 at present. So everything under that, that's completely yours. Student finance can't touch that. This means that if you were to earn under that for your entire life, you would never pay back a penny of your student loans. If you were to earn £27,296, you would pay back 9% of that each year, so you'd be paying 9 pence a year for your university education. And the other important thing is that that gets written off, no matter how much you've paid back or not paid back, it gets written off after 30 years. So you could have earned, as I say, under £27,000 for your 30 years, you never paid anything back, and it just gets written off. No payments are due until the April after you graduate, and scholarships and bursaries, as I mentioned, they're free cash awards, so you don't need to pay those back. Also worth noting that the tuition fee loan and living cost loan just get lumped together into the student loan. You don't pay them back separately. It's all just one big amount at the end of your degree. So here's just a worked example of what I was saying about that 9% after 27,000 payment rate. So here we've got somebody that earns £30,000 a year, which is kind of the average UK salary. So we subtract that threshold from it, that 27,000, which leaves you with an excess of £2,705. You pay 9% of that each year. So you pay back £243.45 per year. You divide that by 12, and that works out at £20.29 per month. So your university education, in real terms, is costing you about as much as your phone contract each month, or a couple of takeaways. Here we've just got another model of how these monthly repayments work out. So if you were to earn £27,500 a year, you would pay back £1.54 a month, and then work all the way up to £45,000, which obviously a very, very good salary, quite well above the UK average. You'd be paying back £132.79 a month. Obviously, it's a good deal more than the lower amounts, but the fact is that if you're earning that much, that amount probably isn't going to have a big impact on your standard of living, and you're probably not going to notice that going out of your account. So really the best way to think about university and think about student finance is that it is an investment into your future. Because while you are accumulating debt, it gives you much better options going forward into the rest of your life. So you're going to have a greater choice of professions. You're going to have greater earning potential. So in 2016, graduates between those ages earn on average £6,000 more than non-graduates. So even if you're paying 100 quid a month, let's say, you're earning on average £6,000 more than somebody who didn't go to university. And you're going to have greater job security as well. So again, the unemployment rate for non-graduates was about 5.9%, and it was double what it was for graduates. So graduates had only an unemployment rate of about 2.9%. So basically, you're half as likely to be unemployed if you were to go to university. Remember, the main thing I do want to get across is that people often throw around the number of I'm leaving university with £60,000 worth of debt. or however much. The total amount of debt really doesn't matter. You could borrow £5 million for your university education, but if you don't earn, above that threshold, you're never going to pay back anything near that. In fact, if you earn, £30,000, you're only going to be repaying £25 per month. And again, I've got another work example of this here just to finish up this section. So £54,000, 582 is at the top. That's basically the maximum amount somebody who's studying away from home outside of London could borrow. If you were to get the maximum living cost loan, full tuition fees, the whole works. So 54,000, let's call it £55,000, is pretty much the maximum that the average student could borrow from student finance. If you were to leave university and go straight into a job that paid you £45,000 a year, which would be very, very unusual, that would be an excellent graduate wage. After 30 years, you would have paid back £47,804. So you still paid back less than the total amount that you borrowed, even though you've been earning £45,000 every year for that 30 years. If you're somebody that's gone into the workplace after university and you work a job that's £27,500 a year every year for 30 years, again, still a very respectable wage for that period, you've paid back £554 of the £55,000 that you borrowed. So basically, if your earnings don't absolutely skyrocket after you go to university, the vast, vast majority of people will never pay back the total amount of money that they borrowed from student finance, and the gaps between the tops of these bars and that red line at the top essentially represent free education. So hopefully you can see that despite all the politics surrounding student debt and all the rhetoric that gets thrown around, in practical terms and in terms of its impact on your lifestyle, student finance has quite a negligible impact for the vast, vast majority of people. Okay, and I can see we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, but I'll just whiz through a little bit about student accommodation, how that works, how you apply for it, and what you might be able to expect about living at university. Okay, so student accommodation is typically offered by most universities in the UK, not every single one, so do have a check to see if they have university halls when you're applying. And in many cases, this will work by first years, will live on campus or will live in the kind of university-owned halls. And then second and third years and beyond will live off campus in private rented accommodation, so just private landlords who rent houses and that kind of thing. Do check if this is the policy the university has. Some might have on-campus accommodation available for all years, but it will vary from university to university. So just see what's on offer and check whether it's guaranteed as well, because some universities will make guaranteed accommodation offers to people who apply before clearing, and then they might not be able to guarantee accommodation if you were to apply through clearing, for example. So do just check what university policies are regarding who can get accommodation and how. Your experience with accommodation is probably going to vary quite a lot, whether you're on a campus or a city university, the two kind of big categories that I talked about earlier. So do think about what that might actually be, and also visiting the university and seeing the accommodation is something I really, really recommend. Obviously, in recent months, in the last year, that's been pretty much impossible. But as we go forward into the near future, hopefully you'll be able to actually, get onto these campuses, get hands-on with the accommodation, and see what it is that you're going to be kind of getting for your money. Most universities will offer different kinds of rooms and different kinds of accommodation, depending on different preferences. So hopefully there's always going to be something to suit your needs and to suit your budget. And on this next slide, I've just got a rough breakdown of, so this is our Canterbury accommodation, just as an example. So these are the different kinds of accommodation and the different price points in a week-on-week basis. So generally accommodation, you'll be paying it in termly instalments. So you pay one in September when you start, one in January, beginning of the second term, and then one in April, May sort of time. But here you can see there's kind of different kinds of accommodation you can get. So one of the big differentiations is between self-catered or park-catered. So self-catered would be whereby you have your own kitchen in your halls, you buy your own groceries, you cook all your own meals, and do everything yourself, that kind of thing. And then park-catered would be whereby you generally pay a little bit extra, and then you can go ahead and get meals provided by the university. So it might be you get 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day at a university canteen or a restaurant, something like that. Obviously, I appreciate some people might be a bit daunted by the prospect of cooking for themselves entirely for the first time. It's something that many people, including myself, hadn't done that much prior to going to university, and it does lead to some hilarious hijinks. In that a guy I knew in first year, he thought that you cooked soup by putting it into the kettle and then just flipping the kettle onto the boil, which was obviously incorrect, and his flatmates were not very pleased when they discovered that he had done that. So if that's something that you think you might fall foul of, then park-catered can be a good option for you to consider. And then also there's other options that might be available. So for example, you might be able to get an ensuite room with your own private bathroom and wash facilities, or you might be getting accommodation that's got shared bathroom facilities where you're sharing that between maybe 2 or 3 people. Again, obviously, it can be a bit daunting to have shared bathroom facilities with complete strangers, but for most people it works out fine. But just see what's on offer for you. Obviously, different universities will have different kinds of accommodation. Very old universities like your Oxford or your Cambridge or your Durham might have accommodation that's hundreds of years old in some cases. That might be something that really appeals to you. It feels like you're going to university at Hogwarts. Whereas new universities might have newer accommodation, which has got a few more mod cons, things like ensuite bathrooms. So think about what your preferences are and what impact that might have on your application. And then how to actually apply. So accommodation applications will be made directly to the university, especially if they're the ones that are owning the accommodation, or if not, they'll be the ones that direct your application anyway. And it's typically going to be done through their website. The applications will open just after the January UCAS deadline in most cases, and they will remain open up until the start of clearing. But do have a check of the deadlines just in case, because obviously that's going to vary from university to university. And then as soon as you have a conditional or unconditional offer, that's generally when you can apply for accommodation, just to confirm to the university that you have applied there and you've potentially got a place there, so you can apply for accommodation. Offers for accommodation will be allocated and sent out after you receive your results in August, because obviously that's when the university knows who's actually got the grades and who's going to be coming. They can start allocating rooms to people. And then students applying through clearing can also apply for accommodation. It's just the case that this might not be guaranteed for them to get accommodation, because obviously they will be second to the pile after all the people that have already applied and had accommodation allocated. So do check, if you do find yourself applying through clearing, about if you can get accommodation or not. And then finally, just a little bit about the Students' Union at a university. I won't go into too much depth because we are at the end of our time. But students' unions are a body that exists at pretty much all universities to represent the interest of students and run the social side of things. They will run things like sports clubs and societies. They will offer employability things, so they might run part-time job schemes. They might help you find jobs in the local area. They'll host big events as well, things like freshers' balls or summer ball, that kind of thing, big parties for students. And they'll often offer lots of advice and support about accommodation, finance, student welfare, mental health, that kind of thing. So most students will be enrolled automatically into their students' union, but if you think about the student experience of what it's like to live at university beyond just your course, then do have a look into the student unions at all the universities you're applying to as well. See what kind of societies they have, see what kind of events they offer, and how much help they can provide you while you're at university. So just to sum up, when you're choosing university, don't just look at course titles, make sure that you're drilling down beneath that and look at what's actually taught on the course, what modules there are, and how those courses are taught and assessed as well. Get started on your applications in plenty of time. Try not to leave it late if you can avoid it, and check when the relevant deadlines are, making sure that you submit well before them. Plan out your personal statement beforehand and try several drafts. Make sure you take your time, and also make sure that you ask for help, whether it be from people at school, people in your family, people who you know who've already gone to university. Remember that university isn't just about studying. As I say, you're going to be living there on the day-to-day. You're going to be doing the mundane stuff of life in that place as well as meeting new people and socialising. So don't just think about the course and the academic facilities when you're considering university. And think about university as an investment into your future. So I would say, it sounds easy for me to say as somebody that works for a university, but I would say don't be put off by the student finance side of things. As I mentioned, in real terms, it's not going to disadvantage you financially going forward if you don't end up earning massive amounts of money, in which case you're probably not going to care anyway. So university seems expensive, but the cost is spread over that 30-year period, and most people will never pay back anything close to the full amount that they borrowed. Okay, so we've come to the end. Obviously I won't take questions now, but I am still around if anyone wants to chat to me.